Good evening to everybody on our webinar tonight. I'm so excited to have Chris and Suzanne on our webinar tonight, and they're going to be sharing with you a lot of great information on self-image. Now, John Maxwell, in his one book, referred to that you can never outperform your self-image. It's such an important aspect of our lives. You need to have a good self-image. It's good for business, it's good for your personal life, it's good for your family life, and so it's so exciting to have Chris and Suzanne. And now I don't have to actually change over tonight to Chris and Suzanne, because I'm privileged to actually have them right here in our office tonight, so I just have to move the computer, so they really made it very easy for me tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Chris and Suzanne, and they're going to give you lots of great information. On the side, you will see that there's a chat box. You're welcome to post comments, post any questions that you might have, and as we progress through the evening, I'm sure they will answer any of your questions that you do have and that you want to also make full use of this evening's webinar. So let me hand over, by just moving the computer, over to Chris and Suzanne.
Great. Well,
oh, there we go. We can actually both get in. So good evening.
Hello, everybody.
It's going to be a bit of a squeeze in to have us both in, but we both always love speaking together, and it's what we choose to do. So just a really, really great big thank you to Paul for having us here.
Yeah, it's always lovely to be able to interact with people from BNI. We've been to some of the meetings, and obviously we really do value our relationship with Paul. And tonight we chose the topic we did for a very, very specific reason, and that is because when it comes down to self-image, sometimes people actually don't spend nearly enough time thinking about it. I'm sure that by virtue of a lot of the work that you've done, you've probably been to some personal self-development seminars. You would have heard people talking about the fact that your outer world is merely a reflection of your inner world. And that is so, so, so true. The thing is, what it all boils down to is, how do you actually see yourself? Now, the reason I am so passionate about self-image is because when it was first introduced to me, I actually shied away from it. And the reason I shied away from it is because I felt great discomfort when I actually started to go there. You see, on the outside, I was very flash. I held a very senior position in a retail bank. I was a national general manager. I was earning a lot of money. I had a couple of hundred people reporting into me. And so if you were to basically look at me from the outside, what you would have seen was success. And that was what I wanted everybody to actually view me as. However, there were voices going off inside of my head around the fact that I wasn't as successful as I actually would have liked to have believed. And one of the most difficult things that I had to deal with was that when I looked in the mirror, I didn't quite like the person I saw. So it really went around self-image, and it went around the fact that I didn't have a very high self-esteem. Although I was, by all accounts, a high flyer, I had massive achievements on my CV. And just to share with you, it's not to boast, it's just to give you an idea. I was the first ever environmentalist to actually speak on human-wildlife conflict in African conservation areas in the House of Lords in London, which, as you well know, is right next to the House of Commons in the British Parliament. So I'd achieved some quite extraordinary things, but the achievements somehow seemed quite empty. And the reason I'm opening like this is because if what I am saying in any way resonates in part with you, then what we're going to be doing tonight is actually going to be really, really wonderful. It's fine to talk self-image, just as it's fine to talk health, just as it's fine to talk physical conditioning. But what do you actually do to be able to build a positive self-image. You see, it's all fine to actually turn around and say, right, I realize that my self-image needs work, but then what do you do? What are the actual steps that one takes in order to begin to build a positive self-image, or a self-image on the inside that truly serves you and what it is that you actually want to achieve? And what astonished me when Suzanne and I were doing a lot of our training internationally, working with the likes of Bob Proctor, who is one of our most trusted and valued mentors, and I'm sure probably needs no introduction given the fact that he is regarded as one of the world's greatest teachers in terms of your mind and your money, and of course the law of attraction. Really came down to the fact that your self-image is something that you actually need to be growing all the time. It's not something that you just stop, or that you suddenly say, right, this is the self-image I want. You actually need to be growing your self-image all the time. And when Bob explained it to me one day over a cup of coffee, he turned around and said, Chris, think of it this way. A person who earns 1,000 Rand a month, if you placed them with someone who earned 100,000 Rand a month, what that person would be doing and the way they would be thinking and the way they would be acting would be to that person who earns 1,000 Rand a month illogical. Now, if you take the person who earns 100,000 Rand a month and you put them with someone who earns 10 million Rand a month, the way that other person behaves and thinks and conducts their life and manages their time would be illogical. And it's just because they haven't grown to that point. So what is logical to you is completely illogical to someone else. Yet when you've actually finally raised your bar or grown yourself into a state where you're able to actually understand that person's world, well, then it suddenly all makes sense. But it was because you didn't know and you were unaware. And the reason I'm saying this is he said the same with self-image. He said, you know, a junior manager, for example, will never have the same self-image as a chief executive officer. A CEO has spent a lot of time either growing himself or herself into that role. And I'm talking, for example, of a multinational company or a top bank or whatever it is. And they have a self-image that they have grown or built. Now, it might have actually been fortuitous in that they had a family that really believed in them. Not everyone's that lucky. And I'm quite open and honest about this. I absolutely love my parents. They did absolutely everything that they could for me with all the resources that they had, and I'm eternally grateful to them because they did the best they could. But a lot of their insecurities when I was growing up as an only child were projected onto me. And as a result of that, I grew up with a mindset of I wasn't good enough. So if I would, for example, go into a cricket game and I would score 20 runs, when I came off the cricket pitch, my dad would turn around and say to me, why didn't you score 50 runs? And if I would bring home a report that had, let's say, for 10 subjects, 5 distinctions and 5 A pluses, the question that would be posed to me would be, why did you not have 8 A pluses on your report cards? So because I didn't ever feel that I was able to deliver enough to my parents, I actually developed an atrocious self-image, and I could therefore never really do enough. And so when I achieved a success, instead of actually being able to enjoy it and savor it and celebrate it, but it is actually the truth. And when you have a really comfortable in your own skin. Now, I'm 45 years of age, and I have worked incredibly hard on my self-image for the last couple of years. And I can honestly now say for the first time that when I look in the mirror, I like what I see. I like the person that I've grown into. I like what I do. In fact, it goes, I actually love who I have become. And if you are unable to look at yourself in the mirror and actually look at yourself with a great amount of respect, appreciation, admiration, and love, well, then there's work to be done on your self-image. And the reason I've taken some time to share with you what is some pretty personal stuff is because we don't necessarily always realize how important self-image is. And the reason we also chose the topic tonight is because it also influences business. But the other thing is, as parents, whatever relationships you might have, it's so important to be able to grow the self-image of the people around you. If you're an employer, you should be absolutely growing the self-image of your employees, because the more you grow their self-image, the more you're going to just get incredible results out of them. The same with your children. And so one actually needs to become very aware of the importance of self-image. And so tonight we'll be able to share some stunning stuff with you. And if you really want to change your self-image, tonight you will learn exactly how, and you'll also be able to help other people as a result of that. Suzanne?
There's so many times that people discuss self-image. They often think that self-image is all about what you look like on the outside. You must have a great image, your hair must be done, you must be wearing makeup, it's the clothes that you wear, you must be in high fashion, and of course we all must be about a size 0, American style, which I think is about a size 6, which I don't think I was born a size 6. But it's not about what you look like on the outside. There are people that look absolutely spectacular on the outside who have beautiful bodies, beautiful hair, beautiful makeup, beautiful clothes, and they are just an absolute mess on the inside. And this is all around your self-concept. And, you know, Paul mentioned when he introduced us that John Maxwell said you will never outperform your self-concept, and it is absolutely true. You know, you often think that people talk about the underdog in a sporting event, that there's an underdog in a reality TV show, whether it's Idols or X Factor. And, you know, a lot of these shows are completely unrealistic and don't do a lot around self-concept. But every now and again you get that one person that just performs out of their socks. And the reason that they do that is because they have a great self-concept of themselves. They believe in themselves more than the other person does. And it's not about, oh, the other person wanted it more. It's the belief that they can have it more. My self-image for many years has revolved around a very unfortunate relationship I had with my mother. And it's taken years and years and years for me to be able to work through issues, work out how they fit into my life and how do I change them around my self-concept. But the biggest surprise to me was my self-concept around money, and that how I wasn't worthy of keeping money. So every time I made a lot of money, I helped a lot of people who actually didn't deserve being helped. But I helped them because I believed that I didn't deserve the money and I shouldn't be able to keep it. And it took losing nearly 7 million rand and my home and many, many other things to realize that I needed to understand that all this hard work, all my hard work, was worth nothing if I didn't believe and value the fact that I deserved the money that I could make. So self-concept and self-image is absolutely huge. How many times, if you think about it, do we read about the youth of today and how desperate they are, how depressed they are around the state of what is going on? And I'm not talking South Africa, I'm talking worldwide. And you've got to start loving yourself, and you've got to start today.
What we're going to do is share a little bit of information with you. Now, on our journey, we've had many people teaching us. So a lot of the information that we share is actually stuff that we've learned. And yes, our guest tonight is the Chris and Suzanne show. We're chatting to you and we're delivering some of our own personal experiences around self-image. But it's also so important for us to be able to share with you material which comes from the greats. These are people who have spent an enormous amount of time developing real mastery around the subjects. And as a result of that, they've been able to convey their teachings over to people like us in the world that we move in, which is in the world of people development and business development. And I'm going to start tonight with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Now, you may or may not have heard of the chap. He wrote a beautiful book called Psycho-Cybernetics. So if there's something that you would like to know, forgive me, I have a bit of a frog in my throat, so if I clear it from every now and again, I do apologize. He wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, that's M-A-L-T-Z. And I just love what he's written. And so we're going to share with you, and please, as we were introduced to webinars tonight, and we're looking at the technology, if there are questions or whatever, please fire it, and we will do our level best to answer the questions. If we don't know, we're actually going to say we don't know. There is absolutely no harm in turning around and saying, I don't know, but I will go and find out for you. So we're not just going to be answering questions for the sake of trying to answer or appear smart, but if we do know something and we're able to add value, we will absolutely do it immediately. Now, what Dr. Maxwell Maltz writes is he says, understanding the psychology of self can mean the difference between success and failure, love and hate, bitterness and happiness. Now, how powerful is that, huh? The discovery of the real self can rescue a crumbling marriage, recreate a faltering career, and transform victims of personality failure. On another plane, discovering your real self means the difference between freedom and the compulsions of conformity. Whether we realize it or not, each of us carries within us a mental blueprint or picture of ourselves. So immediately make a note. If you've got a pen or paper, picture of yourself. It may be vague and ill-defined to our conscious gaze. In fact, it may not be conscious, but it is there, complete down to the last detail. This self-image is our own concept of the sort of person I am. It has been built up from our own beliefs about ourselves. Yeah. Now, remember when I was sharing in London, I just never felt good about my existence, because then you think to yourself, you've got to get a bigger success or more money or more this or more that or more properties or more wealth, and you just go, you're like a hamster on a wheel. You just go faster and faster, and you've got this hole in your soul, and you just don't know why. The self-image is our concept of the sort of person I am. It has been built up from our own beliefs about ourselves, but most of these beliefs about ourselves have unconsciously been formed from our past experiences, our successes and failures, on it just as if it were true. This self-image becomes a golden key to living a better life because of two important discoveries. All your actions, feelings, behaviors, even your abilities are always consistent with the self-image. You will act like the sort of person you conceive yourself to be. You literally cannot act otherwise in spite of all your conscious efforts and willpower. The man who conceives himself to be a failure-type person will find some way to fail in spite of all his good intentions or his willpower, even if opportunity is literally dumped in his lap. I'm going to read that again because that was true of my life. The number of times that I've been working on something and it was on the brink of absolutely going quantum, and then the thing would go and disintegrate. And I used to tear my hair out. In fact, I can still remember when Suzanne and I began this journey, I actually used to talk to her about self-sabotage. I said, I cannot understand this. I self-sabotage myself. It's like it's there, I can taste it, and then suddenly it's all gone. And that's why I'm going to read that sentence again. The man who conceives himself to be a failure-type person will find some way to fail in spite of all his good intentions or his willpower, even if opportunity is literally dumped in his lap. The next bullet point, the second important discovery, is that self-image can be changed. So how good is that? Now, we're talking some pretty heavy stuff here tonight, but how wonderful to know that self-image can be changed.
And before Chris carries on, when you really think about it, self-image if you emptied it out once more, you could even put water in it. Now, if at any stage, no matter what was on the inside, was this anything except for a glass? And if you think about it, we all think that we are whatever we are full of. So if that means we think we're full of nonsense, that also means that we're full of nonsense. We are actually just the container, whatever is put within us. Whatever it is that we think, that we feel, that we do, we can change how it's impacted on us. We can reverse the process. We can decide that we don't want to be a glass filled with dark, murky, black liquid that makes us miserable and unhappy. And we want to be a vessel filled with something that is crystal clear and absolutely beautiful. And this can happen at any stage and at any time. However, what we often found is that with the use of certain techniques and coaching techniques, and in particular NLP, people find that it doesn't last. You don't keep the change. Now, if any of you have ever watched the movie Avatar, in Avatar you see the creatures say to each other, "I see you." And if you think about it, without the use of all the technology and the animation, but think about what they are really saying. They felt collectively. They felt the energy of the group, and when they looked at somebody else, they could honestly see somebody for what they truly were on the inside, in the heart. So think about this. You have been told for how many years that you're this, you're that, whatever. When I grew up, remembering vividly my mother telling me that I was the fat one. I was the eldest child. My brother hadn't been born yet, and I had two cousins, 2 and 4 years older than me. One a ballet dancer who was absolutely tiny, and the other that went on to study acting at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in England, who became 6 foot tall, absolutely gorgeous, my cousin, and extremely slim. And I grew up knowing that I was the fat one, and this actually impacted on my life tremendously because I used food as comfort. So much so that I'd actually trained my body to take carbohydrates and store them as fat. And I say trained because I'm not diabetic. I am not ill in any way. But the minute I become heightened in a distressful way, the minute I start feeling any form of stress, I can actually feel that I become bloated and that I do not process carbohydrates. My mother passed away last year, and I went over to spend some time with my aunt, her sister. And I asked her about, well, we were chatting about something, and I happened to mention that I was a fat child. And she looked at me and she said to me, "Who on earth told you you were a fat child?" I said, well, my mum did. She always told me that I was the fat one, especially when I'd been playing with my cousins. And my aunt laughed at that because she said, well, actually, they were the really skinny ones. And I was always concerned that child services would think that I wasn't feeding them enough because they were just exceptionally thin children, genetically. So I turned 48 last year, and I'd spent a good 40 plus years of my life believing that I was the fat person. Now, how's that for a self-concept? So how do you change that? Neuro-linguistic programming is a great tool, and what it does is it allows you to instantaneously feel what it would be like to change that self-concept, to change your self-image, but it requires work. Because the first time you are faced with a situation that brings you back into those old habits and into those old feelings, you start thinking, oh, well, that didn't work. NLP is no good. And it's all around doing the work. If you've been feeling a certain way for an extended period of time, in my case, 40 plus years, how can you expect with one instruction that feeling that has been embedded and preconditioned into my psyche, into my very being for so long? So think about the things that you're saying to those around you. Whether it's your children or your family or your friends or even your colleagues, you have no idea how it may trigger certain thoughts and feelings within them. And think how that would impact on you. So you're not a milk glass or a Coca-Cola glass or even a wine glass. You're just a glass, and whatever is within you, you can make those decisions. And it's an incredibly important thing to realize. You are not the contents. It is not your personality. It is not your nature. All of those things are conditioned. You've been taught to be those things. You can change your personality, you can change your nature, and you can change your self-concept.
Right, well that was certainly some very, very powerful stuff there from Suzanne, and I actually love the use of the wine glass because it's very visual. And it's always wonderful to bring in teaching aids. We like to keep this webinar actually pretty relaxed and informal. We were told that you could do PowerPoint presentations and all of this, and I actually just thought, again, that's...
We are flip chart people.
and also, who wants to look at a PowerPoint presentation? When you're actually dealing with stuff around people and self-image, you really want to get into the heart of the matter. And so we decided to rather not make use of that at all, and actually just rather come on here and be who we are. You see us for all the wonderful things. You see us for our mistakes. It's absolutely fine. It just is. And that's a wonderful point to be able to get to. Now, we're talking about the fact that self-image can be changed. And what Dr. Maxwell Maltz goes on to write about is that once the concept of self is changed, other things consistent with a new concept of self are accomplished easily and without strain. Self-image, or individual's mental and spiritual concept or picture of himself or herself, is the real key to personality and behavior. Self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment, and it defines what you can and what you cannot do. Expand the self-image and you expand the area of the possible. The development of an adequate, realistic self-image will seem to imbue the individual with new capabilities, new talents, and literally turn failure into success. Self-image is changed for better or worse, not by intellect alone, nor by intellectual knowledge alone, but by experiencing. Now let's just go over that again. Self-image is changed for better or worse, not by intellect alone, nor by intellectual knowledge alone, but by experiencing. In other words, the doing. Now I love this because a lot of the conversations that people have about change, truthfully, when you really understand change and how the mind works and how paradigms are formed and why people do the things they do, you actually realize that they are probably some of the most stupid conversations that could have ever taken place. because the people holding them do not understand why people do what they do. They turn around, for example, and say, change your behaviors. You cannot change your behaviors. You've got to change your paradigms, your programming, because that's what drives the behaviors. So telling someone to change their behaviors is just absolutely ludicrous. Now, where we're going with all of this is the fact that it's experiencing. Now, earlier I was talking to you about the outer world being a manifestation of what is going on in your inner world. So if you were to think about your inner world as emotional, spiritual, and mental, then the physical is a printout of all of that. Yeah, emotional, spiritual, mental, your physical world is a printout of that. Now, it was pretty tough when I was sitting having a coffee with Bob Proctor, and he turned around and he said to me, so Chris, tell me, you look kind of flash. What's the most money you've ever made in a year? So I thought of the amount, and I was actually quite proud of it. And I turned around and I said to him, it was X. And he turned around and said to me, well, that is your internal self-concept or your internal self-image around money. That's what you believe you're worth. And I was absolutely floored. I'd never even thought of it that way. He turned around and he said, the reason that someone is able to charge 300 Rand an hour and the reason that someone else is able to charge 3,000 Rand an hour and they're delivering the same service is because the one has a much higher self-image. They will not trade themselves away. They will not devalue themselves. The person who's earning 300 Rand an hour, guaranteed if you squeeze them, they'll go to 280 or 250. And eventually you'll find that their entire world is so locked up with jobs that they actually don't want, undervalued jobs that they're working themselves to the bone. They're not making the money they want. They are so frustrated. They can't deliver the client services that they want because they've got too many clients. They're rushed and their quality of work actually goes down. And they begin to lead a very frustrated and disempowered life in business. Now, that really smacked me between the eyes because I'd never realized that the amount of money that I made was what I was valuing myself on the inside, because I thought, oh, goodness me, I would have put a whole string of noughts behind that. So I was quite insulted, and I have to tell you, at that moment, it was rather hard not to want to kind of punch his lights out. But the fact of the matter is he was right. And that's the whole thing, is that sometimes things need to be brought into your world which are actually just shocking truths. Now, the beautiful thing about Bob Proctor is being the age that he is at and having had the experience he's had and made the money he's made, he doesn't have to actually try and impress anybody anymore. He's almost 80, and therefore when he talks to you, he just teaches you. That's it. He just shares wisdom, and he's been there, done that. There's literally nothing that he hasn't done. He's experienced great successes, horrendous failures, slept in a telephone box one night because he was completely and utterly homeless. Yet, when he's able to share with you like that, the lights go on, and the lights really were going on for me around self-concept.
It's quite an interesting way to look at things, and we've just had a question in from Liesel. And Liesel, you're asking, do we think there's a place in the business world to just be yourself without preconceived ideas of what a business person should be like? And in answer to your question, absolutely. It is a necessity in the business world of today. Business has become so filled with greed and ego and perception of what you should look like, how you should behave, when, where, and whatever. And we've actually lost the humanity that links people. Yes, you have corporate culture, but we're all living in a culture that started in the 80s, fueled by greed, when there were the big booms, and recently the movie The Wolf of Wall Street will sort of contest that. And the world hit the big crash in early or mid 2000s, sort of 2007, 2008 time. And the fact is that it is the responsibility of small business and entrepreneurs to start reinstilling into people the absolute need to be yourself. Because how can you tell what somebody's true potential is if they are covered in so many layers of what is thought to be the correct way to behave, what is thought to be or dictated to be the right way to act, the right way to speak, the right way to conduct yourself in business. And ultimately, we have all just become little robots, little mini-me's of greedy, egotistical people. And a lot of instances, and more people are finding themselves as square pegs in round holes.
I absolutely agree with Suzanne. And Liesel, be your authentic self. I mean, let's nail it on this call. There is nothing more powerful than when you are being your true, authentic self. Stop trying to be something you're not. The reason I'm saying that is because I spent so many years of my life trying to be something I was not, trying to please people. And it is an empty, mindless, and resultless existence. That's what it is. It's an existence. Just decide tonight, I am who I am. I love myself. Be happy with yourself. Remember, Liesel, you have more power coursing through you than you know what to do with. The power inside of you, the genius inside of you is extreme. And the only way that you will be able to step into your power and step into your genius and live a fulfilled life is when you absolutely engage with your authentic self, not your false self.
And you know, it's such a great lesson to understand, because all that happens is that you just take on characteristics of other people, things that do not ring true to what are your drivers, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what are your, Dr. DeMartini calls it your value system. But a lot of people confuse those kind of values with ethics and morals. Your value system is, why do you get up in the morning? What are the drivers? And does what you're doing every day actually fulfill against the top 5 things that you absolutely love to do? And when I say that, it's not about, oh, well, suddenly I've got to take up a position as a bunny-hugging, tree-loving, nature-loving girl that gives me the outdoor world. But what it is what do you do in your day-to-day job? Does it feed those needs? Does it give you the things, the resources to go and do those things that drive you? And when it comes to your self-concept, that is the most important part, and it works across every single aspect of your life. You know, when you are born, you are empty. You have no knowledge, no learnings, no thoughts, no emotions of your own. So as you are growing up, you become filled up with the thoughts and emotions, the fears, the doubts of your parents, the family around them, perhaps your siblings. And it creates a huge impact on your life. And then you carry those same paradigms, thoughts, and feelings into your work life. And there was a wonderful example taught to us when we were doing thinking into results and to become facilitators. And basically there was a study around family tradition, and they were interviewing certain families about traditions that they had, and they interviewed this family over the American Thanksgiving period. And while they were in the kitchen, they had, or within the house, they had the granddaughter, they had the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, and it was at the daughter's home. And the daughter took a ham out of the fridge, cut both ends off, and put the biggest part of the ham into one tray, and the 2 little parts of the ham into the second tray, and put them in the oven. And the interviewer was completely fascinated by this and said, "Why do you do that?" And she said, "Why do I do what?" She said, "Why do you prepare and cook your ham this way?" And she said, "Well, I don't know, my mother does it." So they called in her mother and said, "Well, why do you do that?" And she said, "I have absolutely no idea, but that's what my mother always did." So they called in the grandmother, and they said to the grandmother, "Why did you prepare your ham this way?" And she said, "Simple. I never had a pan big enough to cook a whole ham." And this is the way we are taught this is the way paradigms become our own. This is actually how we become who we think we are, because we are not making up our minds. We are conditioned, and our self-concept comes from that conditioning.
And it's so important that, because if you want a better world for your children, and what I mean by that is more love, more joy, more happiness, more wealth, more abundance, more money, you absolutely have to be growing yourself. Because the thing is, so much of you is going into them. And it's just a fascinating thing. And when you meet families where the parents are really big into personal growth, it's quite astonishing to have conversations with those children. Now, Suzanne and I are very blessed. We move in this world every single day, and oh my goodness gracious me, those kids are light years ahead of the others. They're absolutely light years ahead of it. They, even though the way they think, etc., they just get it. They have a level of awareness. Now, earlier I was talking about your outside world and your inner world. So, what is the bridge between the two? Well, the bridge between the two is very simple. It's one very powerful word, and that word is called action. So, if you have spent many years not taking care of yourself, and you find yourself in an extremely bad physical shape, it's taken a long time to get there. So do you think that just getting onto the treadmill once and walking for 5 minutes is now suddenly going to have you looking like an underwear model? No, it's not going to happen.
I wish.
Now, the amazing thing is that people think this is the same thing with their minds. They think that just suddenly by some magic wand and fairy dust, or whatever you'd like to call it, boof, hey presto, there it is. There's a new me. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to unwind the overwind. And the way that you do it is through action, and that's constant action, persistent action, day after day after day. Now, we're already hitting about 6:45. I can't believe how fast this webinar has gone. I mean, we were just absolutely loving this, but this is what we do. So for us, this is never any form of unhappiness or whatever. It's just absolutely loving it. We love to learn, we love to teach, we love to share, we love to grow people, we love to inspire. Now what I'm going to do is begin to really teach you. So hopefully you have a pen and paper ready. If not, I will next week, because tomorrow we're actually traveling down to Thorny Bush Private Game Reserve, where we're going to be delivering an annual sales seminar for a corporate. So we're going to be out of town for a couple of days. Really tough life having to teach in the bush, but that's what we do, and we love it. And if you don't get all these questions down, I'll type them up and get them through to Paul early next week, and he can always send them on to you. But do your best to try and get them down. And the reason it's so important to write is because writing stimulates thinking, not typing, writing. So when you want to work something out, write, because it's an absolutely brilliant neurological connection with your reasoning and your. So the first question is, if your external world is a mirror of your internal self-image, what is your external world telling you about your self-image? That's the first question. I'll read it again. If your external world is a mirror of your internal self-image, what is your external world telling you about your self-image?
And while you're sort of thinking about that, this is the guide to identifying what it is that you do to sabotage yourself. When you start finding out these things about yourself, you will start identifying the actions that you take to prevent yourself from succeeding. Because basically your subconscious mind is there to protect you. At all stages, its primary objective is for your care. And when you are doing something that is stretching the boundaries, getting you out of your comfort zone, making you uncomfortable, making you feel fearful, your subconscious will immediately leap into action to save you from this discomfort, hence the self-sabotage. Because although it's saving you from making those changes, it's ultimately pulling you back into the same kind of environment that you're trying to get out of.
I'd also like to share a very personal experience around self-sabotage. The reason I self-sabotaged is because I didn't love myself. When I looked in the mirror, I did not like who I saw. I did not like my life. I did not like the person I had become, and I did not like what I was doing to other people. And therefore, I used to self-sabotage. And the reason I did it is because deep down inside, I did not believe I was worthy and deserving of the goodness that was literally right there for me to take. So that, I mean, that's really cutting to the chase, and I'm just sharing with you very personal stuff for me. But the reason I self-sabotaged is because I did not love myself, and that's it. Finished. Game over. I didn't value myself enough to actually want to really give myself good things. I had to go and beat myself up, smash myself. Yeah, then I started to feel good, because it's like, oh, that's what you've done to other people. Right, now getting on with the teaching. The next question you need to answer, and these are exercises, and you need to really, really spend time on them. You could work on these as if your life depended on it. How would you describe the self-image you project to the outside world? Is it a true self-image of how you feel about yourself? Or are there differences between what you project and how you really feel about yourself? Now, I remember when I answered this, it was an absolute horror story. Because to the outside world, I wanted to appear slick and confident and together, and inside I was chopped liver.
And right. You know, this is a time where that saying, fake it till you make it, is not good for you.
No.
Because you've actually got to really feel inside what you are.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that yet, but you must feel it. You must never fake it.
No, that's so important. Thank you for raising that, Suze. The third question, how do you really feel about yourself? Do you have a positive self-image, or is there room for improvement? Now, someone who says there's no room for improvement, well, the first thing I'd say is, hell, you've got a lot of growth, because you should be absolutely improving your self-image all the time. Because the more you improve your self-image, guess what? The more goodness comes to you. So if you get a self-image that's locked at about, let's say, 100,000 Rand per month, if you'd like to earn R1 million a month, you're going to have to do some work on that. And this is where Harv Eker talks about your money blueprint and all of this. But remember, all of this is coming back to self-image. It's the value that you attach to yourself. That's why some people will not get out of bed for less than 5,000 Rand an hour, and other people will work for 50 Rand an hour. Is your self-image a limiting paradigm? So let me rephrase that slightly, because this has got coach speak inside of it. Is your self-image empowering you? What are the messages that you hold about yourself? In other words, what is your inner dialogue? Now, again, I reflect back on my previous self-image. My inner dialogue was atrocious. The conversations I used to have with myself were pretty much not the nicest ones. Maybe the shoe fits with you. If it does, wear it, and let's get into it and get building you a powerful self-image. Next question. What do you like about yourself? Oh my, isn't that important? Gosh, when last did you actually really think about what you like about yourself? We spend so much time thinking about what we don't like about ourselves.
Including patting ourselves on the back
Yeah.
when we've achieved something. Or being in a position, and this is a big one about self-image, if you are unable to accept a compliment or unable to accept praise, you need to think about that, because that means although you may be a great giver, you are unable to receive. And in order to be given more and to get what you are truly worth, you don't just have to give more, you have to be willing to receive more.
Absolutely.
Because we live in a world of duality. So if you are going to give a lot, you need to be able to receive a lot.
And that's the thing with a lot of people, is they're great givers, but they absolutely are shocking receivers. If you turn around and say to them, well, you look good, they can't look you in the eyes.
Or you say to them, thank you so much for all your effort, and they go, oh, it was nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
It's not nothing. Yeah. If you have delivered a fantastic piece of work, a fantastic piece of advice, a fantastic piece of friendship to somebody, and they say thank you, you just say thank you too. You just received it. You just
Soak
bask
it in.
in it.
Soak it in. Suck
because
it up.
they are thanking you, because that shows that you love yourself, because you are appreciating the compliment.
Right, now the question I posed to you, question number 5, what do you like about yourself? And then you follow it up with, how can you live these qualities more of the time? Then we move on to question 6. Would you like to improve your self-image? If the answer is no, then please get off this webinar right now. And if the answer is yes, then let's go forward. 6.1. Call to mind a person you admire and respect, someone who has a positive self-image. 6.2. Think about their qualities. Write out a detailed, note the word detailed, description in the present tense of the qualities that they have that you admire. 6.3.
Think how important this is, and we're not talking about, oh, I want to have Beyonce's bottom. This is not about physical attributes. This is around who is a wonderful role model, who is somebody I really, really admire, and what are the qualities that they have.
How does a person walk? Think about someone you admire, how they walk, how they talk, their attitude, how they meet and greet the world. And, oh, I'd like to be like them. Well, guess what? You can. Because you have the ability to change your self-image. That's the most wonderful thing about what we have inside of us. So 6.3 says, now take that description, that detailed description, and completely relax. Begin to see yourself as that person and act as if you literally were that person. Embrace this new self-image and begin to imprint this self-image and what they do on your mind. Then begin to emulate or mimic their behaviors. Because just as when you were small, you emulated or mimicked your parents' behaviors, and maybe some of them were absolutely atrocious and have now left you with some pretty big work to be done, you can replace it with serving actions. But you have to do the work. See, the thing is, as I said earlier, most people want to, hey, presto, fairy dust, magic wand, bang, and it doesn't work that way. But so you identify a behavior and then you become aware of it, because change always starts with awareness, becoming more aware. And then you practice it and practice it and practice it. And suddenly you will wake up one day and you will find you doing it automatically. And that is because what you have built is a new series of actions that are finally flooded. In the beginning, you're thinking about it. It's like when you started driving a car. Where's the accelerator? Where's the clutch? Where's the gear lever? Where's the hooter? Oh, hell, I'm going to hit the lamppost. I mean, it was an absolute horror story, probably. And then suddenly you're more and more in practice, and now you drive automatically. You jump in the car, you race here. In fact, sometimes you think to yourself, I don't even know how I got here, because your mind was going the whole time on a completely different topic. But it was because it was locked down. You have become completely competent in what it is that you're doing. And that's exactly the way that you develop massively, massively powerful behaviors which make you feel good. Because when you do them, you think to yourself, wow, I'm talking like Richard Branson. I'm thinking like Richard Branson. I'm just giving you some examples now, but that begins to feed the equivalent of positivity into you, as opposed to when you're doing things that you don't like, where you think to yourself, geez, I wish I hadn't done it. I don't know why I keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again.
You know how children will mimic and copy a cartoon character, how they will know every word of a certain character's dialogue. That is almost to the extent that you want to be matching and mirroring is the terminology that is used in a lot of coaching techniques. So you match and you mirror. You look at what do successful people do. Successful people are successful because they do things in a certain way. And that's what you need to be looking at. When you look at young, rich sports stars, pop stars, all these kind of personalities that have lost their way and they get into trouble and they get into drugs and all kinds of things, or they spend all their money. Those are not the people that you want to be matching and mirroring. You want to be matching and mirroring successful people in business, successful people in the sporting world, people with great qualities and competencies.
Right, now we're moving fast to the top of the hour, so I would like to wrap up with a final powerful exercise for you to do. And it goes around a movie. And the question I'm going to pose to you is, what is the movie of your life? Do you even have a movie? Have you even written a script for your movie? Is it someone else's movie? Are you the main star of the movie, or are you some supporting act? Are you standing behind the curtains? Where are you? What is the plot line of your movie? And the whole reason is because the subconscious mind and the way the subconscious mind works is very, very symbolic. And so what you want to do, and it loves stories, it absolutely loves stories. So once you've actually begun to define what your new very powerful self-image looks like, and you begin to put into practice through actions, then the next stage is write the script to the movie of your life. And for goodness sake, don't make it an absolute piece of trash. Make it an Oscar award-winning movie, because you're actually worthy and deserving of that. And when you do these simple things, as crazy as they sound, your life will change. And the reason I love the fact that they sound crazy is because if they do sound crazy and illogical to you, you should be doing them. Because when you realize how powerful they are, you realize that it is absolutely logical. And on that note, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to hand over to Suzanne to wrap up. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as always, Paul, lovely to be able to do work with you and to interact with your BNI network.
Please understand that this is so relevant in every single part of your life, in your business life, in your love life, your life with your friends. Be the starring role of your movie. Doesn't mean that you don't serve. It doesn't mean that you don't lead. But you mustn't be the supporting act in your own life story. Thank you so much for listening to Chris and I tonight, and thank you to Paul for giving us the opportunity to chat to you. We've had an absolute blast, and I'm going to hand you over to Paul.
For being on a webinar tonight, and I really appreciate that you took the time out of your schedule to be with us tonight and to share with the guys at BNI. We really try to add a lot of value to our BNI members, and thank you for being part of that.
Pleasure.
Guys, thank you for being on our webinar tonight. I hope that you've got a lot of great value from tonight's webinar, and I'll let you know when the next one is coming up, and looking forward to have you back on our webinars. And so we are signing off. Thank you to Chris and Suzanne once again.